Nope.
Percent of funds made go to Patriots commissary accounts. By becoming a sponsor of a J6 family, you can ensure one of the nearly 200 currently incarcerated J6 prisoners is properly clothed and fed. Sign up today to give the vital help these families need and make a real impact in the lives of our POW. Have you ever wondered what it's like to be a January 6th political prisoner rotting away in horrible conditions? January 6th patriots are subject to cruel and unusual punishment every day and kept imprisoned for nearly 3 years without trial. These American heroes have to survive inhumane conditions where they lack basic food nutrients, clothing, and hygiene. Joe Biden's corrupt Department of Justice and FBI Gestapo has been making sure the families of these brave patriots are suffering as well. The breadwinner has been ripped out of the home, and these young families are being extorted thousands of dollars a year to keep up with commissary costs for their J6 prisoner. Many families have been completely devastated, missed mortgage payments and kicked out of their homes, and even the family car repossessed. The ongoing battle these families face to stay afloat and support their loved ones in prison is in desperate need of our help. You can now sponsor a January 6th family to help support them in their greatest time of need. Sponsor J6.com is a new organization started by January 6th political prisoner for 965 days, Jake Lang, ensuring 100% of funds made go to Patriots commissary accounts. By becoming a sponsor of a J6 family, you can ensure one of the nearly 200 currently incarcerated J6 prisoners is properly clothed and fed. Sign up today to give the vital help these families need and make a real impact in the lives of our POWs. Head to sponsorj6.com and support our patriots.
Is Jake calling in yet?
Hey everybody, welcome to Behind Enemy Lines. We got a January 6th prisoner.
Have you ever wondered what it's like?
We've got a video playing again. So today, Terry.
So Jake just texted me. He says, "I don't have video, only audio." Can you hear us, Jake?
Can you hear us, Jake?
Can you?
He's not in yet. He didn't call in.
Did you call? You didn't call in, did you?
He hasn't called into the.
We says, "I don't have video, only audio." Okay, yeah, we know that.
Yeah, so we're going to have Jake on in a minute or two here. He's a January 6th prisoner, right, Terry? He's been in, is it solitary confinement for 3 years? 3 years. And I guess he's going to give us the story of what the J6 prisoners are going through. He's got limited time. I think he's got about
15 minutes.
15 minutes. But sort of apropos after the recent news in the last hour or so about Donald Trump being found guilty on all 34 counts, which was totally ridiculous. I just find it interesting, Terry, that Dr. Fauci, everybody in charge of the pharmaceutical companies, the CDC, the FDA, everybody who lied about the origins of COVID,
yeah, they got away with it.
They haven't been indicted, nothing.
Yep.
And yet Donald Trump is guilty for what? We don't even know.
So while we're waiting for Jake, I'll give you guys some background. Everybody knows about January 6th. Most of you probably heard of Jake, right? He's one of the more prominent folks, and he's been in for 3 years, 4 months. He was on the west side of the Capitol. I was on the west side of the Capitol. Again, I didn't do anything wrong. I was a domestic terrorist. I'm not a domestic terrorist.
I'm going to be sitting next to an empty seat
And
sooner or later. I know it.
you know, we were on the west side, and there was agitators everywhere. We already talked about this on the show.
I
right?
do not condone what this man did.
Yeah, yeah. What me and like a million other people did. But so there was agitators spread throughout the whole area, right? There was people who fought with the police. My understanding, we'll let Jake speak for himself here. He actually had a number of confrontations, allegedly, and he also was in the area where Borland, what was her first name?
Roseanne
Boylan. And she died in his hands, or was, you know, he tried to help her.
There was like a causeway on one of the sides of the Capitol where the cops were, and there were people trying to get in, and she got caught up in that.
Yeah.
And we saw tape of that with the I forget the gentleman's name that was a documentarian for that day. Yeah, she just got caught in the wrong place in the wrong time.
Yeah, so he was there and engaged in some, I guess, activities or interactions with the police officers. What's going on here?
Insurrection.
Yeah. So Eve, I don't know. He says I don't have. So does that link that he has allow him access with just audio, not video?
He should be joining. Somebody's joining now.
Okay, sounds like he's joining right now. So anyway, I even for those individuals who are guilty of fighting with police officers, you know, like BLM for the whole Summer of Love, many people that do this in the city of Chicago, none of them sit in prison for 3.5 years. None of them sit in the hole for 3.5 years.
An unequal distribution of justice. Is that what you're suggesting, Terry?
Yeah. So no one's endorsing fighting with police officers, right?
How many of those Portland pukes who are burning down the courthouse
How many people
have been
got
in
killed
jail
in the Summer of Love?
Yeah, St. Louis guy killed a cop. The Kamala Harris's campaign bailed out the 2 lawyers who threw Molotov cocktails at cop cars. So, you know, this is clearly, I mean, if we look at the people who say that the persecution of the J6 prisoners, and now what we see is Donald Trump.
Is he getting in?
I don't see anybody.
Well, yeah, but there's no audio. I mean,
I know, but it would still show me.
So we're having some.
So does he have a link that gives him just the option, because they're going to control? You know, that he can't have video, only audio.
Well, yeah, Terry, they want to listen to you because they're coming after you next.
Yeah, they can turn their video off through Zoom.
Okay.
If it's just sound, there's a call-in number on the invite too. I thought I can pull up my email.
He said he uses Restream.
That's probably what we should have sent him a link to. I hate Zoom.
Can you send a Restream link or have Jen do it?
She can't get into it.
But I mean, can you send her a Restream link? Then she could send it to him.
The feds are suppressing us.
We can't.
Okay.
It's not going to work.
They don't want this story to get out.
I forgot we did upgrade our thing for it to work.
So Restream wouldn't have worked anyway.
Right. We had to upgrade.
So anyway, we're trying to buy time while we wait, Jake. So anyway, he's been sitting, right? Jen, I'll send you a link with just the audio on it. Okay, she's going to do that. Okay.
That's third world. I mean, you know, they were the Democrats, the left, the liberals were. How much do they go after Vladimir Putin? Suggesting that, you know, he goes after his political enemies and accusing him of killing Navalny in prison. And yet here in the United States, we got people in prison for J6 for just being on the grounds for 3 years. And we got Donald Trump being convicted of 34 counts for God knows what. This Gateway Pundit piece says Judge Mershon instructed the jurors that they do not need to reach a unanimous decision on specific unlawful means that Trump is accused of in this case.
Let's focus on J6, and we'll do that later. Sorry, before we.
It's the same thing. You know, it's an unequal distribution of justice.
So the people that were involved in January 6th, right? There was some that got into altercations with the police officers. No one's condoning that, but not one of these people should be in prison now. None of them. There was no insurrection. I was there. Nobody went there for an insurrection. People were dressed for to fight with Antifa and BLM. Jake was actually dressed up in, I think, work slacks and a shirt. He wasn't dressed up in, he wasn't there to battle with Antifa. A lot of that stuff just happened. It happened.
Well, no, there were Asian provocateurs. There were definitely people that did some bad stuff on January 6th. The point was the government involved in inciting any of it? And if so, that is a serious thing. That is Nazi Germany type of deception. I mean, that's the Reichstag fire. If the government, and we've seen many testimonies from federal agents, including the director of the FBI, Christopher Wray, who has been less than forthcoming about how many FBI informants were in the crowd on January 6th. Clay, what's the congressman's name from New Orleans, former police officer, Clay something or other? He was on, he's a representative in the House of Representatives. I think he's out of Louisiana, and he claimed on Tucker Carlson that there were over 200 FBI assets or government assets in the crowd that day. So we could call them agent provocateurs. We know about the Gretchen Whitmer case, where basically, all of the people involved in that were FBI informants, and then they tried to make that a thing. And we know that the guy that was running that case was then reassigned to D.C. during January 6th.
So there was agitators everywhere. Let me answer this just in case.
Just
Because he's got.
I have to hold to the mic.
Hello. Oh, okay. Yeah, we're just finishing up, Richard. All right. All right. Thanks. All right. So
we got Neger, second guest, ready to go.
So it looks like. Fuck. Sorry, I swore.
The feds are suppressing us.
Yeah, it's not easy, working with somebody from prison. So hey, Richard's ready to jump on.
Yeah, we got it.
That's him calling me. So I think we should.
The problem, folks, is we've got this guy Jake Lang, the J6 prisoner, is trying to call from jail, obviously. Yeah. So.
Tell him we'll set up and see if the text him.
Well, yeah. So we'll try to figure out another time. Things don't work. I'm kind of shocked that he could call in from jail anyway. I don't know what happened. Oh, he's on. Is he?
You ready?
No way. We got him. You hear us, Jake?
Hey, Terry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. How's it going, man?
Hey, brother, God bless you.
Yeah, God bless you. Oh my God, what it's an honor to have you on.
3 years ago, we were losing this information more around January 6th. And this is probably the most specific example that anybody can name about, the Washington Post, the New York Times, MSNBC, CNN, all these garbage legacy media outlets, and even a lot of our Republican feckless congressmen like Kevin McCarthy and Ted Cruz and these people, they were spinning this lie about January 6th right from the very first day and from the, oncoming months after that. And through years of hard work, we've won back the narrative towards the truth. And now your average American knows, oh yeah, January 6th was a setup. Oh yeah, January 6th was the day where the Capitol Police turned their weapons on unarmed Americans, right, and killed 4 people. That's what we've won back. So that was the first and most major goal. And I mean, the legal battles are a struggle in themselves, but as long as the hearts of the American people are with us, it makes anything. We can withstand anything together.
Yeah. Yeah, Jake, so I'm sure you saw this as well, right? There was agitators all over. I was on the west side of the Capitol as well. And I even, like, as we were walking up, right, and we were there, we were behind Epps. I got videos behind Epps and all this stuff. As we were walking up, you could see it was very suspicious. Before any of this crap happened, there was guys just standing by themselves. Get up there, we need more troops, go, take pictures. And they were spread out by themselves, which was unusual, because how many people go to an event like that themselves? And then they were all aiming and yelling at, coming from the Trump event. Did you see agitators yourself? Did they stand out when you were there?
I speak my truth. I think that January 6th was a day where patriots stood up and said, we're not having it. I was there as well. And I mean, it's hard for me to say that I saw feds or agitators because I don't know if I did or didn't. In the time and in the moment, I was with a group of Americans, inside the West Terrace Tunnel screaming, America will never be a socialist country. Yeah. We're coming in. This is our house. And it was awesome. Yeah. It was just like American unity. Yeah. Now, were there some people in the crowds that may have distributed, cans of tear or pepper spray and handed, some of these weapons out that have been, cataloged?
I didn't hear about that. Really, I didn't hear about that. Did you? I didn't hear about that. There was people handing out.
For sure. I mean, there were dozens of people there that were distributing those type of armaments and whatnot. But in the moment, when you're trying to defend your life from tyranny and from an armed force of redcoats, you'll take anything somebody hands you. I mean, it was a brutal battle. They murdered Roseanne Boylan right in front of my very eyes. I mean, she died practically in my arms, Tim.
Yeah, there was an energy, right? You felt an energy that I've never felt before. And there was so much, at that moment on the west side, there was anger, frustration, excitement, disappointment. There was a mix of emotions that I went through, right? I was with a retired police officer as well. And it's hard to explain unless you were there. And I don't know if you felt the same type of energy there as well yourself in the crowd.
Oh yeah, I mean, we had the Holy Spirit with us. We were in the state of adulation of our country and our willingness to fight in love for our country. But at a certain point, when the enemy attacks you and besieges you from every side and hits you with, concussion grenades and all this stuff. I mean, you get hit a breaking point, and that's what we see on January 6th. And it was not just a breaking point of that day, of that particular event. It was a breaking point where the American people said, we're done with the lockdowns. We're done with the transgender pushing down our kids' throats in schools, drag queen shorty hours. We're done. We will, if necessary, stand up and take back this country. Yeah, January 6th was just a taste.
I mean, I know you're not locked out from the outside. You heard what happened today with Donald Trump, right? Being convicted on all 34 counts or whatever they came back with. Did you hear?
Of course. He warned us. He warned us very early on in this entire battle. They're coming for and the things that they wanted to do to us.
Yeah.
That they've done to him now. We have a class of political prisoners in this country.
Hey, Jake, Paul Drabick here. Thanks for coming on. Just a quick question. What are your alleged crimes? And have you been sentenced, or are you still awaiting?
I've been waiting 1,230 days for trial. And I have allegations from the most trumped up political charges of obstruction of Congress, a 20-year maximum felony, to charges of assaulting police officers, which police officers are people that uphold the oath of office. These people were armed redcoats that were murdering American citizens, unarmed American citizens. So I don't even agree with to call them police officers. In that given moment, they were turncoats. They were hurting us. Mm-hmm. They were hurting America, and they were a very grave threat to our lives and to our country. But and a bunch of other bogus charges: parading and picketing inside a Capitol building, entering and remaining inside a restricted area. I mean, they hit me with 13 different federal charges.
Yeah, I saw one of your recent podcasts and said, there's like more people still being arrested to this day. We left at the last barrier where the police were fighting, right? And people were just starting to go up this scaffolding. I don't know if you heard this. You're probably more in tune than I, but are they just arresting people now just for solely trespassing? Have you heard that?
Oh, they are. Yes, they are completely going after anybody and everybody at the Capitol, including people that were very far away from the inside of the Capitol building. People that were peacefully protesting on the lawn are now, our rights as Americans are obliterated. They will come after you no matter what. If you align yourself with Trump and with this Make America Great Again, America First movement, you're on the menu.
So what led you to being arrested? What was the thing? Did you post someone? Did a friend turn on you? What led to your arrest?
I was posting very proudly on social media that I'm a Jan 6 patriot and I stood for my country, and America is going to fall if we don't stand up as the American people and maintain our elections and maintain our Constitution. And I was arrested 10 days later after January 6th, and that was my last day as a free man.
Wow.
Are there any indications as to when your trial's set to begin?
September 9th, 2024.
Wow.
Hopefully November 6th it will be done.
Yeah.
I mean, after Trump wins in November, it's kind of all downhill from there. I mean, no matter what, if we've got, a couple more months after that till he takes office, those are going to be the sweetest and easiest months of incarceration I've ever done.
Yeah, I guess I was telling my buddies today, it's in vogue to be a convicted felon now after the results of Trump's election.
Oh, don't you wish, Terry?
But technically, you're not a convicted felon, right?
No, I can vote. I'm not.
You're not convicted of anything.
If you want to get technically, I'm an innocent man that's being tortured by the United States federal government, corrupt regime, if we want to be really technical.
Hey, Jake, want to back up a second? We interviewed a documentarian from January 6th, and we saw some of that footage of the Roseanne Boylan incident. It sounds like you were right there on the ground when it happened. Can you kind of give us a play-by-play of what happened there? Are you allowed to talk about that?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for those who don't know who Roseanne Boylan is, she's a 34-year-old woman from Atlanta, Georgia, that lost her life at the Capitol needlessly because of Capitol Police brutality and just gross indifference. They murdered her. And, those who, like myself, who lived to tell the tale and tried to save her life, were being persecuted by the government just because we know that they murdered a woman and they're covering it up. Uh-huh. If you read the official January 6th narrative, they'll tell you that she died of a drug overdose. Mm-hmm. And, I'm there to tell you that the Capitol Police started a stampede and pushed over hundreds of people on top of her backwards down a flight of steps. And she died from a mixture of blunt force trauma. They were hitting her while she was on the ground. Chemical asphyxiation. Mm-hmm. She was pepper sprayed and tear gas and CS gas. And obviously, trampled upon. And so I tried at about 4:26 p.m. in the afternoon on January 6th to dislodge her from the bottom of a dog pile. I was unsuccessful, and I had to kind of triage my efforts, and I moved, my efforts over to Philip Anderson, a young black man, and I was able to grab him and scoop him up out of that situation. But, Roseanne lost her life defending this country from a corrupt communist coup d'etat that was happening inside the Capitol, and she's a hero, and we should remember her name.
So we got a couple minutes, I think, of your timer. Did you get a warning yet? I don't know. I didn't hear anything. Quick, do you have
on my side? I heard a warning.
You did? Okay. Do you have a celly?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, that's good. It gives you someone to talk to. How often they let you out to shower?
Depends. I'm out of solitary now. There's lockdowns here perpetually where I'm at, but it's imminent. We're always in constant threat of being locked in and put in solitary confinement. So
so you're out of the hole. So that's good. It's probably after it's a breath of fresh air. People just don't understand how bad it is.
Hey guys, I got the 1 minute warning here.
Okay,
Let me tell everybody in the audience.
Yeah,
how they can support.
Yep. Go ahead.
Yes, please, guys. So, the January 6th movement here, most of the men were the breadwinners at home. They brought home the bacon. They provided for their wives and kids. And, we've been locked up behind bars and basically had our livelihood stolen and destroyed. Homes are being mortgaged and cars are being repossessed. It's a nightmare scenario. And so, on top of that, not only did the families lose the income of the dads and the husbands and the men that are in prison, they also have to now pay for commissary products, hygiene, food, clothing, stamps, email credits, phone call minutes.
Phone number?
And it gets very expensive. It could be like $500-$600 a month.
Email?
Or more.
Yeah.
And so we created a program out there. If you guys want to come alongside and support the Jan 6 political prisoners, you can become a monthly commissary sponsor. And that's huge. That's like that makes a big difference in our lives. And it helps also our families at home. So they're not, breaking the bank and going into bankruptcy or foreclosure, trying to take care of us. So if you guys want to sign up for this program, I appreciate it. The Jan 6ers, extremely grateful. Your generosity
Say the
is not
website.
going.
So what's the website?
SponsorJ6.com. Sponsor the letter J, the number 6.com. SponsorJ6.com.
We got it up right now on the screen, Jake.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, if you guys could play that video. It's about to hang up on me.
Yep.
I love you guys. Keep doing what you're doing. Terry, you're the best, man. Both you guys, man. Keep fighting for the Jan 6ers. Keep fighting for this country.
Take care,
You
Jake.
too, buddy.
Hang in
Wish
there,
you the
buddy.
best of luck, man.
God bless you. God bless America.
So. Wow.
Man, that's
3
years.
We're lucky. Yeah.
I mean, what like
Every blow to him makes him. There you guys are.
yeah, all right. So moving on quickly to our next guest, Richard Gage from richardgage911.org. Richard is an American Institute for Architecture, was with the American Institute for Architecture for 30 years from San Francisco Bay Area, member of the and founder and former CEO of Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth. and now independent at richardgage911.org, works closely alongside his wife, Gail, to bring 9/11 truth to the people and to try to get an investigation from the federal government. And we're going to talk about why Richard wants to do those things. So, Richard, how you doing? Welcome in.
It's good. It's good. Everything's going great. I'm excited to bring the news, the evidence for the destruction of all 3 World Trade Center skyscrapers today.
We're
I mean,
happy
God,
to
we have
hear it.
3,600 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation. So there's a lot to talk about.
So, Richard, do you want to give us a quick, background of your experience as an architect and kind of lead into how you got involved in trying to bring 9/11 truth to the people based on your background and what you saw that day?
Well, that's a lot. Yeah, I've
Elevator pitch. How
been
about
an
that?
architect for 30 years, and I've worked on many steel-framed buildings, institutional, etc. And the latest one was actually 1 million square feet of mid-rise office space and retail and parking structure in Summerlin, Nevada. That was quite a project. So, I was at home getting ready for work, and I saw these towers smoking, and people were freaking out on the TV. I didn't know at that time that a 3rd skyscraper came down on 9/11, which was that day. Not for another 5 years till I heard David Ray Griffin, who was giving a presentation, interview actually, with KPFA's Guns and Butter program on free speech radio in the San Francisco Bay Area, where most of my career was. So I heard this evidence about a 3rd tower, and I heard this evidence about beams ejected from the World Trade Center,
Right.
dripping with molten metal. It was amazing. So I had to do something. So I researched it, and I found out, oh my God, what he's talking about here is true. Because I went to the Grand Lake Theater in Oakland, and I couldn't get in though. There were 600 people waiting to hear David Ray Griffin about these conspiracy theories.
And David Ray Griffin was another architect or engineer.
He's actually a theologian.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he has written 14 books on the subject of 9/11 truth, including a whole book just on Building 7. And
Well, that was the suspicious one, right? The most suspicious.
yeah, as you'll see, yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to sharing that evidence with you.
Okay, so I've seen a lot of your stuff, and I've heard from many other sources about the thermite and the evidence of the molten iron. And I don't know if you want to start with that, but that seems pretty interesting and pretty compelling, and that definitely doesn't add up.
No.
Do you want to explain
it
to
doesn't
people?
add up at all.
So that
In
was
fact,
found in the remnants of the destruction of the towers, correct? Do you want to explain to people a little bit about that and why it doesn't add up?
Yeah, I do. I want to tell you the whole story. Let me share my screen. I've got
Sure.
some host disabled participant screen sharing. You got to let me in on that one.
Yeah, he's working on that right now.
Oh, here we go. Yeah. Still
Yeah,
got.
I messed that up.
Yeah, 1 second. We're got a technical difficulty here.
So I'm viewing Terry Newsom's screen right now.
Yes.
He's working on that.
So, starting with Building 7, because, no plane hit this building, right?
Right.
And yet it went down. So we have 2 planes bringing down 3 skyscrapers in New York. I mean, this was a major skyscraper also. Let me try this now.
Yeah,
There
that
we
was
go.
the one that was developed
job.
by Larry Silverstein, correct? And he was the
Yeah,
same
in
guy
1986.
he was the
It was
same guy who
just
took.
on the outside of the World Trade Center,
Yep.
and it became a part of the World Trade Center set of buildings. He acquired the other 6 buildings
6 weeks before the
just 6 weeks. That's right.
Right. Yeah, I
it's
know
really,
all about it. Maybe you could touch on that if we got time as well.
Oh, we're going to talk about it first, as a matter of fact.
Oh,
because
okay. All right.
I mean, it takes a lot of courage to look squarely at this stuff. You guys have been doing it a while. So have I. But if you think about when you first heard
Yeah.
about these, some portion of this vast set of fairy tales.
Well, I
give
mean,
it
I
to
was
us.
in particular. I was just graduated high school at the time, and it basically motivated me to join the army and go fight in Iraq.
Oh.
So when I found out the truth about 9/11, and I won't say that I know what happened. I'm just saying the truth of a lot of the things that are covered up. Let's just say it was a difficult reality for me to ingest.
I was not that. I'm old enough to be his daddy, so I'm not that young. All right.
Right.
So we can see your screen, Richard.
But all of us were quite moved deeply
Oh, absolutely.
when we found out about this. And so I'm just giving a heads up to people that and that's another reason we start with Building 7. According to the official narrative, nobody died in this building.
Mm-hmm.
And most architects and engineers don't even know about it. In fact, it was the 3rd worst structural failure in modern history. And yet most of us don't know about it. We go all around the country to architecture and engineering conferences,
Mm-hmm.
and we show them Building 7 coming down. We say, did you know about this? And they say, no, it looks like a controlled demolition. And you say, well, I agree with you there. Do you know when it happened? On 9/11. And they go, what? That's not a twin tower.
Yeah.
No, but it's easily the tallest building in most of our states. I mean, this is
Okay.
no slouching building. Each floor was an acre in size. Here it is standing just fine after the destruction of the towers. Actually, there was a little bit of damage, but NIST.
Sorry, Richard. I think we're just.
You gotta change your slide. We got the 9/11 explosive evidence. Dare to know the facts. That's what we can see
Yeah.
right now.
Oh,
There we
That's where
go.
we can
There we
Okay.
go. We got it now.
Okay, so I see what you're saying. So this is after the 2 towers fell, correct? And that's Building 7 there, still standing on the left hand side.
yes.
Okay.
Except that's very interesting. Let me redo this. I gotta fix this. Hold on a second. Got a technical difficulty. There you are. Slideshow from beginning. Now, you're seeing dare to know the facts.
Yep.
Now you're seeing most people don't know about the World Trade Center. And here it is. You're still on dare to know the facts. That's a problem. I'm sharing my screen and I'm turning slides.
Yeah, we're
So-
getting like your OBS studio with the with your controls over it for moving the slides.
Yeah. But
Can you minimize that, Jason?
let me start over.
You might have to
From beginning. Share. And Zoom. And oh, come on. Here's Zoom. So let's stop that share and start over. And this is so much fun.
Mhm.
And let's pick the correct screen.
Yeah,
Sorry.
we were
about
having
that.
some issues on our end. It probably
There we
threw
go.
yours
No.
off.
That was my bad. So
Fits the screen.
you got it now, right?
Yeah, we can see the whole screen of the slide now.
Yay. So NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, who was tasked by Congress to explain these collapses to the American people. They said, this is this damage that we see, the building was impacted. They said it wasn't a significant factor in the building's collapse. Well, let's look at that collapse. The east penthouse comes down first in 7 seconds. And then in the rest of the building drops like you see now, like a rock, straight down, uniformly, symmetrically into its footprint. And in under 7 seconds. This is pretty extraordinary.
Yeah.
NIST was tasked with explaining this to the American people. How do they do that? Let's see. This is Sham Sunder of the NIST report, which came out, by the way, 7 years after 9/11. They just delayed it until everybody forgot about it who knew about it, which was not that many.
What we found was that uncontrolled building fires caused an extraordinary event. The collapse of World Trade Center 7 was primarily due to fire.
Okay, so fires brought the building down. Well, let's look at those fires. These are the only videos and photos that we have of these fires, and they're few, they're small, and they're scattered. In fact, they're burned out more than an hour and a half before the building came down. So NIST's official theory, the collapse by thermal expansion, could not possibly have even happened because it requires those fires to be burning on that floor at that time, expanding those long span beams, pushing that girder off of its seat. So they have a whole elaborate set of fire simulations to try to show us how drastic those fires were on that floor, but you can see that they're burned out underneath here in the actual photographs. Well, fires have never brought down a steel frame building, guys.
Right.
We have a lot of, dozens and dozens of these that have never brought down a steel frame building, steel frame fire protected structure like high rises are.
So this is literally the only example that we know of.
Building 7 and the
supposedly.
Twin Towers. Don't forget those, but we'll
right.
come to those. So these fires have burned much hotter, longer lasting, and larger fires in these buildings. And so not before nor after in these fully engulfed buildings have we ever lost a steel frame fire protected structure. So we have to ask ourselves, well, what could have brought this building down? Well, let's look at one possibility, controlled demolition. We have a series of them on the right, building 7 on the left. Is there any similarity?
Free fall, right?
Is there enough similarity to warrant an investigation into the possible use of explosives, especially since fire, the official cause of this building's collapse, has never in history brought down one of these buildings? So we got to ask ourselves, does Building 7 have any of these features? Well, let's start with feature number 1. Is there a sudden onset of destruction? Listen to Dan Rather as you watch this view.
And what you're seeing are high shots. Now, here we're going to show you a videotape of the collapse itself. Describe that. Now we go to videotape, the collapse of this building.
It's amazing.
Amazing, incredible, pick your word. For the third time today, it's reminiscent of those pictures we've all seen too much on television before, when a building was deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down.
Whoa. What? What did he say? Deliberately destroyed by well-placed dynamite to knock it down?
I'm sure he just misspoke.
I would assume that if they hired a demolition company to do that, they probably couldn't be that perfect in their demolition and explosives.
No, there's an extraordinary. This is quite a scientific feat for engineers to accomplish, and explosive loaders. And there's plenty of failed demolitions. I'll show you a couple of them. No, Dan's using his intuition here. So we all should, right? Because it doesn't look anything like fire. So we have something else going on here. In fact, they've hidden it. Dan's never repeated those words again, by the way. And we've never seen this building on mainstream media coming down since then, with 2 exceptions early on. So we we have a problem here. Well, feature number 2, is there a straight down path here for the building? Let's look from West Street. Yeah, pretty straight down, pretty symmetrical.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you do that? You have to remove all of the core columns within a split second of each other. I'm talking a millisecond. And then all the perimeter columns followed about a second later. And then repeat that on every floor. Any deviation in that pattern.
So Richard, you're speaking in terms of physics here, right? Right. As in this structure would never have been able to fall symmetrically as it did unless the supporting elements of that building were all taken out virtually at the same time. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely. And the question is, can these fires do that? I mean, you see how simple this gets?
Yeah.
This is not rocket science, guys.
So have you thought outside
means-
of the architecture and, the reasoning why, it's so complicated to make it fall like that? Why would the, like say this conspiracy, why would the government care about going to all the, or whoever, right, to have explosives put in this specific building outside of the other two? I mean, have anyone came up with their deduction as to why they would want this to happen in this building?
Well, let's ask that question when we get through the evidence.
Okay.
I always
All right.
start with the evidence.
Sorry. Okay.
Now, these buildings can't fall if any deviation in the pattern that we just talked about. This is one of the things that can happen. It's really bad. The building will tip over. This is another that can happen. So it's really bad. Somebody has to go into that building and fix those explosives, right?
Okay, so these are examples of
the steel had weakened. There would have been asymmetrical
and
sagging. It would have been gradual.
Any,
you wouldn't have had
this is bad.
Dynamic.
You don't want that to happen. Now, that's not a controlled demolition, but the building did have asymmetrical damage causing an asymmetrical collapse.
Okay.
Right? That's the point with that one. How fast is it coming down? Physics professors have analyzed this. Physics teacher David Chandler shows us that it came down, as you said earlier, at free fall. Well, wait a minute. How is it coming down at free fall? That's as fast as a bowling ball falling out of the sky.
Mm-hmm.
This building had 40,000 tons of structural steel supporting it, 3 to 5 times stronger than it ever needed to be.
Yeah.
And
Richard, where the fires were located, those fires that you showed us early on, and if those if they were really hot enough to do the damage, I'm not saying they are, would those have been asymmetrical type fires, or were they?
Every fire is an asymmetrical fire.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Fire moves around the building slowly. It burns out one area in about 20 minutes, moving on looking for fresh new fuel sources.
Mm-hmm.
That even NIST acknowledges that in their report, though they say these fires were burning in that area for over an hour and a half.
Mm-hmm.
So they have a real internal contradiction problem.
Mm-hmm.
These fires are shown in the photographs as moving around the building.
Mm-hmm.
So how can these fires bring that building down symmetrically?
Yes.
So Richard, just a quick question on that. Like, the only possible way from a physics standpoint that this could have been done by heat, right, is if the heat the heat of the fires on all of that steel heated up at the same time to the same temperature in order for it to destabilize, right? That sounds completely impossible. That the odds of that are...
It is. And synchronistically timed floor by floor. Don't forget that.
Right.
It's pretty amazing. So let's look at the damage and see if we can learn something. This was a moment-resisting steel frame structure, and it falls like a house of cards. And so that means all the columns and beams were severed, one from another. Well, and that's only a 4 to 6 story pile, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a haystack pile in the center of the footprint. Buildings that fall due to natural causes like these in earthquakes fall over to the path of least resistance. The columns and beams are not severed one from another.
Mm-hmm.
The concrete is not pulverized to a fine powder. And these fires can't accomplish that at all either. So what can? Let's see if there's witnesses of explosions. Here's Daryl, a medical student, interviewed that evening after Building 7's collapse.
We were watching the building actually because it was on fire. The bottom floors of the building were on fire, and we heard this sound that sounded like a clap of thunder. Turned around, we were shocked to see that the building was it looked like there was a shock wave ripping through the building, and the windows all busted out, and it was horrifying. And then about a second later, the bottom floor caves out, and the building followed after that, and we saw the building crash down all the way to the ground.
Pretty amazing. How about Kevin McPadden, former Air Force medic?
You heard explosions, like boom. It's like a distinct sound. It's not like when in compression, like boom, 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 like floors that were dropping and collapsing. This was boom, and like you felt a rumble in the ground, like almost like you wanted to grab onto something. That, to me, I knew that was an explosion. There was no doubt in my mind.
And this gentleman saw flashes.
I was standing like 2 blocks away, and all of a sudden I just seen a big flash, and then I seen the building coming down, and I just seen people just running everywhere, chaotic like.
Wow. And this gentleman, FDNY captain, has his experience here.
1-7 let go as well, and was a series of concussive explosions.
Okay, and this first responder.
I remember feeling that like it was like freight trains underneath the earth, shaking the earth, even shaking me. That's when we all saw Building 7 crumple in the middle, like way up at the top. It buckled and then dropped.
Okay, fires don't do that, by the way. If this was planned in advance, guys, we would have people who would know about it, such as Chief Nick Visconti, who says, hey, we're moving the command post over this way. That building's coming down. Well, wait a minute. No fire has ever brought down a steel frame fire protected structure, ever. And he's saying it. And this, and the other chief, Pete Hayden, says, we had a discussion with this engineer there, and if we allowed it to burn, could we anticipate a collapse? They asked him. And he says he was pretty much right on the money. In its current state, the engineer said, you have about 5 hours. Whoa, wait a minute. Fire's never brought down one of these buildings. And he's saying, not only is it going to come down, but exactly when it's coming down, because it did come down in 5 hours. So he could only have had that prediction could only have been made with foreknowledge. We don't get the name of that particular engineer. But what about these construction workers walking away from Building 7? We don't know why, but they hear an explosion over their shoulder. They look back at the building, and they look straight into the CNN camera and say this.
Keep your eye on that building. It'll be coming down.
The building is about to blow up. Moving back.
Here. All right, guys. Sorry.
We are looking back. There's a building about to blow up. On flame. Debris coming down.
What? The building's about to blow up? Flame and debris coming down? How do they know the building that has a few small scattered fires in is about to blow up? Very, very interesting.
So I have a question about that. So
yeah.
What makes you think, like, these construction workers, these union guys, what, like, when they say that, like, what makes you think that they believe they have knowledge that the building's going to blow up, or are they just saying that as they're walking away? You know what I'm saying?
No, I think they heard the explosions.
No, he said it's about to blow up, right, Richard?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
The exact words were, the building's about to blow up. So they have foreknowledge.
I thought I heard an explosion.
All we know is what they said. We haven't talked to them.
Yeah.
They're not available, unfortunately. But this gentleman he heard those explosions.
Mm-hmm.
But before he heard those explosions, this is his experience, because he and others were held back. They were told the building was going to come down. The firefighters were kept out of the building. They were told it was going to come down. And this gentleman's listening to a radio held in the hand of who he believed to be a Red Cross worker.
At the last few seconds, he took his hand off, and you heard 3, 2, 1.
What?
Do fires bring buildings down to countdowns? You know, what's really going on here? In fact, the BBC announced the collapse of this building.
This. Yeah.
Yeah. 20 minutes before it ever happened.
Yeah. Yep.
More on the latest building collapse in New York. You might have heard a few moments ago, I was talking about the Salomon Brothers building collapsing. And indeed it has. Apparently that's only a few hundred yards away from where the World Trade Center towers were. And it seems that this was not a result of a new attack. It was because the building had been weakened during this morning's attack. We'll probably find out more now about that from our correspondent, Jane Stanley. Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy.
Sketchy indeed. There's the building that she just announced the collapse of. No other building has collapsed other than the Twin Towers.
That's a big one. Yeah.
It's huge. And not to be outdone, though, CNN announced the collapse of this building at 11:07, or a 50-story building, they say.
In New York, Alan Dodd-Frank joins us on the phone in Lower Manhattan. Alan?
Aaron, just 2 or 3 minutes ago, there was yet another collapse or explosion. I'm now out of sight. A Good Samaritan has taken me in on Duane Street. But at 11:15, there was another collapse or explosion following the 10:30 collapse of the second tower. And a firefighter who rushed by us estimated that 50 stories went down.
50 stories?
The street filled with smoke.
It sure did. But it wasn't till that evening that the streets filled with smoke from Building 7. Had that building come down at that time, at 10:45 in the morning, we wouldn't even have any videos of it because it would have been completely obscured by the massive dust clouds released when the Twin Towers came down. So a lot of 9/11 researchers speculate that it was supposed to come down at that time, and that those mysterious construction workers walking away from the building knew it was coming down because they fixed a dud that didn't go off at the right time. So that's speculation. It's very interesting to add to the story, as is the owner, Larry Silverstein.
Real quick, Richard, before you go to Larry Silverstein, for controlled demolitions, how do those usually work? Is it a chain reaction? What is the?
You have to place shaped cutter charges against the columns and beams in the building, thousands of them in this case.
Okay.
And as we mentioned, have them go off synchronistically timed, floor by floor.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
So So in essence, they've all got to be connected to the same time delay switch or whatever it is.
Computer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
This is highly detailed work. They don't light fuses. They don't push plungers. This is all, and can be done wirelessly.
Okay,
So
that's what I was going to ask
high
you.
tech.
Even back in 01, this could have been done wireless. Because I'm trying to get at, would there be any indication from anybody this would have been able to be concealed from people's awareness?
Well, if you have tenants moving around in the building, you have access to floors. If you have access through the elevator systems, you have access to the core columns in the building without the tenants necessarily knowing about the placement in the core. So there's a little more detail on.
I've heard that was available for the towers for sure.
Yeah, and we'll come back to that. But here's Larry Silverstein's statement a year after 9/11 on PBS.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Wait a minute. They made the decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse. They, fire department, don't make decisions to pull a building. They're
Right.
charged with firefighting, right?
Right.
And first of all, they weren't even allowed to fight this fire. The firefighters made the decision fairly early on. Actually, it wasn't their decision not to attempt to fight the fires. And FEMA and NIST says there's no firefighting operations in the building. So they weren't in there to pull out, because Larry Silverstein comes back later and says, oh, I didn't mean pull the building. I meant pull the firefighters out of the building. They weren't in the building at all. So this is an extraordinary faux pas or Freudian slip. I don't know what on his part. But that's why one reason we go to the experts to find out what they think. And we have dozens of them. Here's a controlled demolition expert.
Danny Jowenko is the expert on this in Europe. What did he say?
Dit is controlled demolition. Zeker weten. Zeker weten. Er is nagesprongen. Dit is in opdracht gebeurd. Het heeft een team gedaan van experts.
That's very helpful information, as is the 36 structural engineers signed on to the petition demanding a new investigation into the destruction of all 3 of these skyscrapers. You can see that petition on our website at richardgage911.org. Kamal Obeid says a localized failure in a steel frame building like WTC7 cannot cause a catastrophic collapse like a house of cards without a simultaneous and patterned loss of several of its columns at key locations in the building. What does that sound like? What can do that? Fire.
I mean, I'm not I'm not an architect, engineer, or physicist, but I mean, this all just makes sense to me now that I see it from a different perspective. Like, I don't understand. I mean, I've seen house fires. I've seen fires in structures of all kinds. I've never seen anything free fall because of a fire. Not even a house. It just doesn't make sense.
Knowledge is liberating. And that's why Professor Leroy Halsey, one of the top forensic structural engineers in the country, put together a team to find out what happened to this building. Because indeed, if this building came down by fire, there's hundreds of other similarly designed buildings that need to be retrofitted immediately, because firefighters go into these buildings routinely.
Yeah.
They don't worry about the building falling on them. So he assembled a large amount of structural data, and comparatively to NIST, they used the same input data that they had available, and they did an analysis. He found out, well, it wouldn't tip over. Excuse me. Let's look on the left. In order to get it to look like the video, he had to take out all the columns and beams in the building. And NIST, their computer model on the right, they had to take out as many as they felt comfortable with, I guess, but the building begins to crumple. It begins to tip over. So they stop it just 2 seconds after the overall collapse. They don't want us to see what happens to their model, because they said, oh, this looks exactly like the demo, the actual video of the building. It doesn't. So we have essential findings here from the Halsey report. The University of Alaska in Fairbanks, fire did not cause the collapse of Building 7. The temperatures were not high enough to cause the weakening of the steel framing. Thermal expansion did not result in a loss of support for the beams and girders, and the building didn't experience a progressive collapse as claimed by NIST, but a global collapse caused by what? The near simultaneous failure of all of its columns. Now, what can do that? Not fire. So this guy knows what's going on. He produced a 135-page report that we've given to every member of Congress and every major structural engineering university in the country with zero feedback. So we have to ask ourselves, what could do this? If fire can't, is there any evidence of extreme heat, i.e. incendiaries, which work by means of heat to destroy steel structures, like a hot knife through butter? thermite in particular. Well, what do they find in the original FEMA report in 2002, before NIST came along and threw this report out? FEMA found never before observed eutectic reactions, intergranular melting, causing a solid steel girder to turn into Swiss cheese, like we see in this piece of steel that they studied, with silver dollar size holes. Fire doesn't do this to steel. Office fires, jet fuel doesn't even do this to steel, as we'll see. Well, what can do it? Rapid oxidation, sulfidation. What can do that? Liquid iron, that's molten iron, by the way, guys. That's 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. Most office fires are 500 or 600 degrees, sometimes 1,000 degrees. This is 3 to 6 times more than that. So what can do this? Sulfur formed during this hot corrosion attack on the steel. They did a great job documenting this, except, and New York Times calls this phenomena, perhaps the deepest mystery uncovered in the investigation. But NIST threw it out. And in fact, the report author, Jonathan Barnett, fire protection engineer, says steel members in the debris pile appear to have been partly evaporated in extraordinarily high temperatures. Jeez. Well, there's a problem with that. Evaporating steel takes 4,000 degrees, more than 6 times what these fires, in all likelihood, were in temperature. I saw melting of girders in the World Trade Center, says who? The structural engineer given a National Science Foundation grant to study this steel, Abolhassan Astani Azza. Well, we know he's right because the molten steel or iron is pouring out of the material held in the crab claw excavators. And we can tell by the color of this material what its temperature is. We're exceeding 2,500 degrees here. So there's multiple avenues of proof for temperatures that cannot possibly be accounted for in the official narrative of any of the 3 buildings, because in the Twin Towers, we have jet fuel. But ME Petroleum, the manufacturer for jet fuel, says it burns at 600 degrees only Fahrenheit.
I'd like to
in open air.
Add something to that. I'm the producer, Jason Hayes, but I do a little blacksmithing, and you showed that color chart, but you showed colors during the day, and those are the colors you would use at night from a blacksmith. So those have to be even hotter.
Yes, and aluminum can't even glow bright yellow. And because we have bright yellow material pouring out of the Twin Towers during the daylight. And that's an important distinction because aluminum can glow yellow in darkness. So thank you for bringing up that point.
Okay.
We do have it pouring out of the South Tower minutes prior to its collapse.
So is that a indication that the energetic force had to be present, that a fire never could have burned that hot to melt the steel in that way?
Typical office fire. No way.
Right.
Nothing in the official narrative can account for this.
Just to move the steel, you have to, like with a hammer, you have to have it over 1,000 degrees.
Wow.
Or to bend it or dent it or shape
to work it, you know?
Yeah. Well, what can do that? Maybe thermite can, an incendiary used by the military to cut through steel like a hot knife through butter. But what is thermite?
An incendiary used by the military? Thermite is a compound of iron oxide and aluminum, which when ignited sustains an extreme heat reaction, creating molten iron. In just 2 seconds, thermite can reach temperatures over 4,500 degrees Fahrenheit, quite enough to liquefy steel.
Well, this is important because if thermite were used, it would explain all of this phenomena of extreme heat that we've been looking at. So and that also could only be evidence of ignited incendiaries. Well, let's look in the dust and see if there's more evidence of ignited incendiaries. For instance, the U.S. Geological Survey does their particle atlas of the World Trade Center dust in 2005. They produce a huge tome of data. What do they find in every one of the samples? Previously molten, that's 3,000 degrees minimum. Iron, we haven't used iron in our skyscrapers for 100 years. Where's the iron come from? This is cast iron, elemental iron. Well, elemental iron in its molten form is the byproduct of thermite, as we just saw. And spheres. How do they get spherical? We'll come back to that. But up to 6% of these dust samples are previously molten iron microspheres. By extrapolation, you can estimate that it's about 4 tons of these spheres altogether. In fact, the EPA says these are a signature component of the World Trade Center dust. We don't know where they came from, but it's not even World Trade Center dust unless it has these previously molten iron microspheres. Well, R.J. Lee, an environmental consulting firm, does an analysis on the dust also. They say these spheres are formed during the event. We don't know where they came from, but they're formed during the event, not before, by the iron workers welding the building together, not afterward by the iron workers cutting the building apart, but during the event. Well, let's do an experiment and find out where these can come from. Experiment is the arbiter of competing hypotheses.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a thermite experiment. A small amount of thermite produces what look like thousands of sparks. But what are they really? They cool and they fall into the pan as molten iron, previously molten iron microspheres. Why are they spherical? Because liquids, when they're dispersed, form themselves by surface tension into spheres. It's just what they do. Could that explain the toasting of the tops of these cars in this extremely high heat event, for which there's no official accounting in the official narrative?
You mean for the car, the burning of the top of those cars that wasn't that couldn't be explained by
a collapsing building.
Collapsing building, right? Okay.
No.
Yep. Gotcha.
No. And so we have to ask ourselves now, is there any evidence of unignited thermite? So, yeah, a team of 8 international scientists led by Niels Harrit in Copenhagen analyzed the 7 independently collected samples that are sent to them in a series of very high-tech labs. And they get real curious because they find these red-gray chips, dual-layered, red-gray, red on one side, gray on the other. They're about a 1/16 of an inch long on average. They thought they were primer paint, right? But they're attracted by a magnet. They get real curious now. They go, why? That means that there's a high iron content. Well, where's all this iron come from? Primer paint is not attracted by a magnet. Its iron content is not sufficient. So they analyze the red layer and they find what? Iron oxide and aluminum powder. There's no aluminum powder, or presence of aluminum, I should say, in paint chips. This is not ordinary paint chips. They get real curious. This is the signature of thermite. Well, they zoom in 50,000 times with an electron microscope and they find what? Nano-sized particles of what? Iron oxide crystals and aluminum platelets 1,000 times smaller than the diameter of a human hair. This is nanotechnology. Very sophisticated stuff. In fact, it's set in a bed of oxygen, silica, and carbon, which is organic material.
So you're saying this is this material that they found is nanotech. This was engineered at the molecular level.
not molecular, but 1,000 times smaller than a diameter hair, is getting there, getting there real fast.
It's pretty small.
They did research. They found out this stuff was developed by Lawrence Livermore Lab. Explosive composites based on thermite reactions. It's called super thermite. It's been put out before 9/11 in the peer-reviewed literature. So it's mixed and intimately at the nanometer size scale. You see, when you get this stuff so small like that, its surface volume increases exponentially. So the chemical reaction happens virtually instantaneous. So they've engineered an incendiary, which works by means of heat, and to become more explosive.
Richard, Lawrence Livermore Lab, is that a military? It's a government facility, correct?
Yeah, the Department of Energy runs it, but they do mostly.
Where is that out
work. of? In Livermore, California.
Okay, and they're quite certain this came from that lab.
No, I'm just saying that lab developed.
I see. Okay.
Material that has the same characteristic features. In fact, one of those parallel characteristic features is they put these chips in a differential scanning calorimeter at Lawrence Livermore Lab, and at about 420, 430 Celsius, about twice that for Fahrenheit, they ignite.
What I'm trying to get at is this
material
is not widely distributed. It would not be easy to get your hands on.
Normal thermite is available on eBay, which is kind of fun to play with. But this stuff is thermite? Military grade.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at.
Elements of it are classified. This stuff was made public. Well,
okay,
guess what?
So that's a key thing. Classified.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you can't get your hands on this stuff. But the team of 8 scientists did the same study. They put their chips in a differential scanning calorimeter. They found the exact same exothermic reactions. The stuff is not paint. Paint does not have these exotic properties. So they know it's not paint. They know it's exothermic, which is thermitic, which is thermite based. But what happens when they ignite? They produce molten iron microspheres with the same chemical signature as the molten iron microspheres produced and found in all the World Trade Center dust and studied by USGS and R.J. Lee.
Looks identical.
So it's identical. We know exactly where these previously molten iron microspheres came from. They came from these red-gray chips. As if we didn't know, they're found attached to partially ignited red-gray chips, as you see here and here. This stuff is not made in a cave in Afghanistan. It's made only in the most advanced defense contracting laboratories. And we include Los Alamos National Lab in that bunch as well. So they conclude in this 25-page peer-reviewed paper that the red layer is active, unreacted thermitic material incorporating nanotechnology. It's highly energetic pyrotechnic or explosive material. This is in the World Trade Center dust. Every sample that they found or had available to study. So it stands uncontested. By the way, nobody's put forth their own peer-reviewed paper saying, hey, this stuff is just paint and I can prove it. No, that's what you do if you want to dispute somebody's conspiracy theory, right? So that's never been done. People wave their hands. They say, oh, that's just paint. No, you can say that all you want. That doesn't make it true. But it's found all of this evidence, the 10 key characteristic features of controlled demolition and some very uncharacteristic features with the use of incendiaries, is direct evidence of destruction with explosives, or in this case, incendiaries.
Richard, do we know of any other perhaps adversaries that were engineering at the nanotechnological level back in 2001? I'm assuming that commercially it wasn't widely practiced.
No, I don't know if they can make this in Iran. or Iraq,
Right.
LOL, or in Israel. They might.
And this was 2000, but we have to remember this was 2001. This is 20 years ago, 23 years ago.
Yeah. What about that?
I'm just assuming that this was more, this was, the capabilities were less then than they are now.
From people outside the Lawrence Livermore lab. Yeah. Agreed. So with additional circumstantial evidence and testimony, eyewitness testimony, we find that proof of controlled demolition, a body of proof that has convinced 3,600 architects and engineers to sign on to the petition and demand a new investigation. And many of them appear in our forthcoming film series, 9/11 Crime Scene to Courtroom, an unprecedented film series taking the hard evidence of 9/11 to court. And so we're inviting everybody to participate in co-producing this film. This is the time, because we're now in post-production, meaning editing, and we've got to support our Touchpoint editor, Stev from Australia, who's really enjoying this process. He started out as a volunteer and then he found himself in financial trouble. He's got to take other work. So we're raising $10,000 to support him full time, because his skill is without exception. And we need to wrest him away from those other jobs. Why is that so important? Well, we're submitting this film series to, and we're making it in the context of evidence to a special grand jury investigation. And 60 exhibits have already been submitted to the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan and have been, by law, we're supposed to have been given to a special grand jury, but we sued them all the way to the Supreme Court, and we couldn't get a hearing in the Supreme Court. So their ruling stands that the Second Circuit Court of Appeals ruling stands that we don't have standing as architects and engineers who are responsible for designing these safe buildings, and the family members.
Where have I heard that before?
Signed on to the petition. Yeah, I mean, family members. If anybody has standing, they do.
Right.
Right. So we're going to a federal judge to make sure that this gets into the grand jury's hands, because if Building 7 was a conspiracy, and obviously it was a different conspiracy than the conspiracy that we've been led to believe, then we have to look at the Twin Towers very closely and ask ourselves, is it possible that they could also have been brought down by explosive devices? Well, just look at them.
Where there's smoke, there's fire, right, Richard?
Well, a lot of smoke. In fact, most of this is aluminum oxide ash, the other byproduct of thermite, which we haven't talked about yet. But we have these molten structural steel sections ejected laterally out of the towers, trailing thick white smoke clouds. This doesn't even look like a collapse. We show both towers at the same time.
More like an explosion.
Hundreds and hundreds of explosions. We'll look at them carefully. So, in fact, let's go through the features of controlled demolition. Is there a sudden onset? The North Tower is still, and all of a sudden it's in uniform downward motion. No jolt, no hesitation upon impact with a cold, hard steel below. Same with the South Tower. It's still, and all of a sudden it's in uniform downward motion. There should be jolting, hesitation. It should hit the steel below, begin to fall off the building, and fall to the street below for both of these towers. But that's not what happened. What we're told happened by NIST is that the upper part of this building drove the rest of the building down to the ground and then destroyed itself. This is called the crush down, crush up theory of Zdenek Bazant from Northwestern University in Chicago. He performed within 2 days after 9/11 the most complex mathematical wizardry anybody's ever put together besides Einstein. And he calls it, and this remains the key theoretical basis for NIST's column failure theory. It's pretty amazing. I mean, the rest of us are in shock, right? Not this guy. He's in his den cranking away on this incredibly obfuscated set of mathematics. In fact, it took engineers 10 years to decode it. And I'll show you what they found when they did. But the theory suffers right away from Newton's third law of motion, which is what? There's an equal and opposite destructive force when two bodies collide. Like, say, a Mack truck and a Volkswagen. Which one's going to get destroyed? The lighter, weaker part. Does it matter if we drop the Volkswagen onto the Mack truck? No. Same rules of physics apply. The weakest part of a structure cannot possibly destroy the heavier, cold, hard, intact steel below. In fact, at the top, we have less than an inch. And then it gets heavier and heavier as you go down until at mid-height, you're 36 inches by 16 inches, 2 inches thick. But it gets heavier and heavier and heavier till at the bottom, you're almost solid steel.
Yeah.
52 inches by 22 inches. No, the top part is not going to destroy the bottom part. And guess what? It doesn't. Watch the top part very carefully. It's destroying itself in the first 3 seconds. Watch the lower red line. It shows that the top part is telescoping in on itself. It's being destroyed in the first 2 to 3 seconds. There's no movement on the part lower. Question is, what's destroying it? We'll come back to that. But if it were driving the rest of the building down, we'd see it. But none of the photos, none of the videos show a top part driving the rest of the building down. It's missing. It's been destroyed in the first 3 seconds. What do we see instead? Well, you tell me, which one is World Trade Center, the World Trade Center tower, and which one is the volcanic eruption? And guesses? They look almost the same, don't they? Yeah. Upward, outward, arching streamers, a geometry of fireworks, freely flying solid objects, molten, trailed by thick white smoke clouds. So we've got an analogy here for what really happened. In the case of the volcanic eruption, it's probably one explosion. In the case of the North Tower, turns out to be hundreds. We'll show you that in a moment. But also, if it were driving the rest of the building down to the ground, it would have crushed these few remaining core columns, which stand 1,000 feet in the air for 6 seconds. And then they're undermined from underneath. And they descend.
Oh, I don't think I've ever seen that video.
Huh?
I don't think I've ever seen that video.
This is probably one of the most important videos omitted by NIST.
So this was probably somebody with a camcorder or something?
Yeah, there's several views of this.
Yeah.
Because everybody had their cameras on the towers.
Wow.
But that's one view. So it's not this, is it? It's not the top part crushing the bottom part. Again, the theory that remains as the only support for NIST's failure theory. It's more like this, with explosions blowing out away from the core, hurling those 4 and 8 ton structural steel sections laterally, clearing itself off of these few core columns that remain. This is completely ignored in the $20 million NIST report, producing 10,000 pages of, again, obfuscation. They were tasked by Congress to determine how and why World Trade Center 1, 2, and 7 collapsed. They obviously failed miserably. And we can see that no more clearly than with the witnesses of explosions. The first responders' oral histories recorded within a month after 9/11. 186 of them are witnesses of explosions. NIST claimed to have interviewed 116 first responders. They must have missed every one of these because they did not include even one. Let's look at them. We felt the ground shake. We could see the tower sway, and then it just came down. Again and again, you're going to hear this order of events, right? They see, they hear, they feel explosions before the towers collapse. All of a sudden, the ground just started shaking. Felt like a train running under my feet. The next thing we know, we look up and the tower's collapsing. Shook my bones. Shortly before the first tower came down, I remember feeling the ground shaking. I heard a terrible noise, and then debris just started flying everywhere. I saw a flash, flash, flash at the lower level of the building. You know, like when they demolish a building, with each popping sound, it was initially an orange, and then a red flash came out of the building. And then it would just go all the way around the building on both sides. Saw a number of brief light sources being emitted from inside the building between floors 10 and 15. He saw about 6 of these brief flashes, accompanied by a crackling sound before the tower collapsed. I saw low-level flashes, saw a flash, 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 and then it looked like the building came down. You ever see professional demolition when they set these charges on certain floors? You hear a pop, pop, pop. When I heard that friggin' noise, that's when I saw the building coming down. An explosion appeared at the very top simultaneously from all 4 sides. Materials shot out horizontally. And then there seemed to be a momentary delay before you could see the beginning of the collapse. How specific do these witnesses need to be? Professional, expert witnesses. There was an explosion in the South Tower, one floor under another. When it hit about the 5th floor, I figured it was a bomb because it looked like a synchronized, deliberate kind of thing. It seemed like on television when they blow up these buildings, it seemed like it was going all the way around like a belt, all these explosions. The building was blowing out on all 4 sides. We actually heard the pops, you know? You heard the pops of the building. I thought the terrorists planted explosives somewhere in the building. That's how loud it was, a crackling explosive. Another loud boom at the upper floors, and then a series of smaller explosions which appeared to go completely around the building at the upper floors. And another loud earth-shattering blast with a large fireball that blew out more debris. The lower level of the building, you know, like when they demolish a building, that's what I thought I saw. You see any flashes? I said, yeah, I thought it was just me. He said, no, I saw them too. Everybody, I think, at that point still thought these things were blown up. So I was fully expecting anything else to blow up. You were there when the planes hit? No, I was there when the building exploded. You mean when it fell down? No, when it exploded. He's very clear what he saw. Well, how about feature number 3? Is there a straight down symmetrical progression? Curiously, the South Tower begins to tip over at 22 degrees, as a matter of fact. Well, that means there's asymmetrical loading from this top portion of the building above the plane impacts. There's asymmetrical damage from the planes. There's asymmetrical damage from the fires. How in the world, then, do we get complete symmetrical damage all the way around the building, like a belt, like the firefighters said, from top to bottom? How is that even possible due to fires in planes? Let's zoom in on the leading corner of those explosions. In this looped video, I see about a dozen explosions every floor or every 3rd floor. It's pretty damning. They are individual, isolated, relatively small explosions, in all likelihood by pre-placed explosives or shaped cutter charges. This is not a nuclear weapon going off like some have theorized. This is not energy weapons softening this steel like others have theorized. So it's very clear what's going on here, especially with all those witnesses of explosions, multiple explosions. all the way down the building. Feature number 4. Let's look at some of these isolated explosions called squibs, in the controlled demolition industry. They occur 20 stories down below, 40 stories down below. In fact, these squibs are occurring even 60 stories down below the zone of destruction. There's no possible accounting for these explosions going off in the official narrative, right? This is supposed to be a top-down collapse. Well, in the left side of the South Tower, in this looped video, you see a dozen of them all at once, destroying the rigidity of this upper section of building such that it can't fall off the building because its rigidity is being compromised by the explosions. So it settles back down into the building after the point that this video stops. So how fast is this building coming down? Is it coming down at free fall? Almost 90% of free fall. Physics teacher David Chandler models this. Others do too. It's 2/3 of free fall. Meaning what? That 64, I blew it. Sorry. It's 64% of free fall, meaning that 90% of the resistance of the columns had to have been removed. That's a calculation you can derive, which is not disputed. So that is pretty darn important. It's getting faster and faster and faster every second. That's the definition of free fall, acceleration. In this case, darn near free fall. Through what? 80,000 tons of structural steel beneath the point of plane impacts. So these are giving almost no resistance. There's more steel here than glass in the building. This was a very unique structure, one of the early very tall high rises. They weren't taking any chances. And so there are 47 massive core columns, 240 perimeter columns, 14-inch by 14-inch square steel tube columns, those were. And so we have to ask ourselves, what happened to those things? Well, they're embedded in skyscrapers all around the World Trade Center. They've destroyed the Winter Garden 600 feet away. They were laterally ejected up to 600 feet, like these freely flying structural steel sections that are going out. Wait a minute, back to, forward to, back. How does gravity work? Down.
Down, yeah.
What's going on here?
Yeah, right.
Out.
So you're that particular video right there is indicating an explosive force pushing it outward, right?
It can only be that.
Yeah.
And what's it trailing? Thick white smoke clouds also. Guess what?
That's interesting.
Steel structure is not flammable in office conditions. It could be flammable in thermite conditions that produces 4,000 degree temperatures with shaped cutter charges. So that's, again, a dead giveaway also. But in terms of the outward force, there's enough energy here to hurl a 200-pound cannonball 3 miles. And there's hundreds and hundreds of them. The building's only 200 feet wide, but the debris is out past 1,200 feet, well beyond the circumference, the perimeter of the World Trade Center towers, destroying, again, the Winter Gardens to the left. So that begs a question, right? If 100,000 tons of steel framing is distributed outside the footprint, what's crushing the building? It can't. It's not there. It's not available. It's up to 600 feet outside the footprint. It can't crush the building. It's not even, it can't happen. Maybe it's the concrete. Let's look at the concrete. Because there were 110 floors in each of these towers, 4 and 8 inch thick concrete poured in metal decking supported by lightweight steel trusses. We're looking, each of them are an acre in size. So we're looking for 100 of them. We don't find 50. We don't find 20. We don't even find one of these acre-size floors. All we see at the bottom is a 6-story pile of miscellaneous columns that didn't make it outside the footprint. But we're still missing 90,000 tons of steel. So here's a real pancaking collapse in an earthquake in Mexico. We see the pancakes. That's what we're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
Like 100 of them, 110 of them maybe. Where's the concrete? It's missing. There it is, pulverized in midair.
Okay.
To a fine powder. All the photos, all the videos show this incredible volume of pulverized concrete, 90,000 tons in each building.
So that was the point of the volcanic explosion picture side by side.
Yeah.
You were showing
And both of the towers were the same.
It was explosive.
Just like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's pulverized to 100 micron particles. And what happens to all that concrete, 90,000 tons? It's laterally distributed across lower Manhattan, as you see on the right, and laying in a blanket about 3 inches thick from river to river across lower Manhattan. So, hey, that begs the question, if 90,000 tons of concrete is pulverized and spread over 3 square miles, what's crushing the building? Together, this is like 7/8 of the weight of the building, the steel and the concrete. Weight which was used in the calculation by Zdeněk Bezant to try to prove how the top part could crush the lower part. And in the crush down, crush up theory. And guess what? It wasn't there. So that's fraud. But in addition to that, they doubled the mass up above, and they decreased the column strength below by a factor of 3. I told you it took engineers 10 years to decode this. That's what they found when they did. The thing was totally rigged in favor of collapse, this computerized model by Zdeněk Bezant. Complete fraud on the American people. And these errors have been submitted for peer review in the Journal of Engineering Mechanics by the American Society of Civil Engineers, but they won't publish it. What did they say? Why? What's the reason? It's out of scope. Wait a minute. How can it be out of scope to challenge the results and methodology of a previously published peer-reviewed paper in that journal? So there's a lawsuit going on, and they're going to have to account for that someday, soon, we hope. Well, how could they have gotten access? In this case, we have high energy explosives and probably nanothermite as well. Could it be under the auspices of a fireproofing upgrade, which they had in the year prior to 9/11? Because those upgraded floors shown in red here happen to coincide with the impact points of the planes. Could that be nanothermite applied as fireproofing in liquid form, such as intumescent paint, which is also kind of a liquid applied, well, is a liquid applied fireproofing? That's a possibility. Kevin Ryan found this in digwithin.net. Well, that's his blog site, digwithin.net. You can see this report there, among many other excellent reports.
Hey Rich, sorry to interrupt you. My tech guy has got like 15 minutes left. I don't know if we can do a condensed version or do a part 2.
Oh, we're there.
Oh, okay.
We want an investigation of the elevator modernization, which was going on, which would have given them access to through the elevator hoistways to the core columns and beams in the building. So Ace Elevator came out of nowhere to get this contract from Otis Elevator, who had installed and had been maintaining these elevators. It's all documented in Elevator World in March of 2001. So the 9 months prior to 9/11, we have.
Did you?
Huh?
Yeah, I worked for Elevator World for a couple of years when I lived in
Oh,
Mobile,
you did?
Alabama.
That's amazing.
Yeah, small world.
That's great. So you're going to want to see this. I'll email you the article if you're interested.
Yeah, that would be great.
And what happened to the steel? We have easily the largest and most perplexing structural failures in history. And yet 400 truckloads a day were lined up just 2 weeks after 9/11 to cart this steel to where? China for recycling.
Yeah.
Before investigators could get their hands on it and do a proper forensic investigation. Hey, this is the illegal destruction of evidence in a crime scene.
Why
prompting
China, Richard? Dude.
Why? I don't know.
Yeah.
They need steel. They don't produce steel. They buy it.
They buy all our scrap.
And recycle it. Fire Engineering Magazine's Bill Manning cried out, crucial evidence that could answer many questions is on the slow boat to China, showing an astounding ignorance of government officials to the value of a thorough scientific investigation. The destruction and removal of evidence must stop immediately, but it didn't. And so what has convinced this many architects and engineers to sign on to the petition demanding a new investigation? The 10 key characteristic features and some very uncharacteristic features of controlled demolition with incendiaries and explosives. So those experts, again, are appearing in this film, which we're asking all of our listeners to support in one way or another. Co-produce the film at richardgage911.org. And while you're there, look at some of the other documentaries we produced. 9/11 Explosive Evidence. Experts Speak Out. 7, the story of the Alaska University at Fairbanks structural engineering review that we talked about. And Ed Asner's 15-minute presentation of this evidence, all of which is outlined on our brochure. We got to get to the bottom of this because after all, we have $14 trillion that your great-grandchildren will be paying for. And their great-grandchildren will never pay this debt off. The Afghanistan war, longest war in U.S. history.
Take a look at the human cost of that.
Oh, my God. 1 million deaths minimum in Afghanistan.
Paul's an Iraqi war vet.
30,000 suicides of U.S. soldiers and veterans.
Absolutely catastrophic. That's like
$14 trillion.
4 times the amount of people who died over there. It's not even being acknowledged, just swept under the rug. And with the Patriot Act, we've got our loss of our civil liberties through the Military Commissions Act and the National Defense Authorization Act of 2012. We can be arrested without a right to a lawyer, a trial, a jury. We can be tortured. We can even be assassinated. With all of this additional consequences of 9/11, you can't sweep it under the rug. That's why we're looking at it. The truth about 9/11 is dark. I mean, where do we draw our line in the sand? Do we wait for the next 9/11? No.
Yeah.
Folks, it happened over the last 3 years.
Yes, COVID.
Yeah, that thing we don't talk about on certain platforms. So speak the truth about 9/11. We may just be a couple of millimeter high domino, but look what kind of effect we have when we share this information. The power is immense.
That was 13 dominoes. If I had 29 dominoes, the last domino would be as tall as the Empire State
Building. And that's what we have. The deep state is extremely powerful. They're entwined in our government, media, and of course, military. And we can only take them down by working together. If everybody listening to the podcast today, we can, if you just share it with 2 people and ask them to share it with 2 people, man, that domino is going to be as high as the Empire State Building. Correct. So it's not too late. This war, we're not in a full-on totalitarian deep state tyranny, but we will be very, very soon if we don't resolve the next election, and
Yeah.
if we don't start talking about.
Well, it's
this
compelling scientific evidence.
And you
to
notice not
suggest-
a single one of those dominoes collapsed.
Yeah. Well, thank you for the presentation, Richard. That's like I just said, that's compelling scientific evidence that will at least bring about questions that need to be answered by the federal government. And for me, it's obvious that they've covered things up. And we were just talking to somebody last week about the JFK assassination, Jerome Corsi, and he spoke as well about evidence that was destroyed. This seems to be a pattern with the deep state.
They have a playbook, and they've used that playbook in the last 3 years with COVID.
Yeah.
And I've done a complete presentation on the parallels between 9/11 and that false flag operation as well.
I saw the one you did on October 7th for the Israeli attack as well.
The playbook was used in Gaza as well.
Well, again, we thank you so much for your time. It was a great presentation, and I certainly would encourage people to go to your website. That's Richard Gage 911. Is it truth.org? I'm sorry.
Richard Gage. There it is. 911.
Oh, there it is, right there. Thank you.
Oh, you got that down. Look
there
at
you
that.
go. Yeah, looks good. And visit Richard's website. Contribute if you can. We should know the truth about 9/11, and it appears that we don't have it. Thank you again, Richard. We appreciate your time, and good luck on your future endeavors.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, your time.
Take care. Jason, okay. Well, yet again, sounds like the government's not telling us the whole story.
It's like we got these college professor types on our show, which is pretty interesting.
Terry,
it makes it easy because I don't have to read
Terry,
books.
are you learning?
Yeah.
All right. Well, next week, is it next week? No, what do we got next week?
Well, I don't know. If you guys have your meeting, I might have Kappas on next week. If you guys
Okay.
think. Me and John.
Yeah.
Talk about the South Side, so we're not sure yet. We're going to talk about my good friend John Kappas, who wrote the book Tall Money. It's going to be made into a movie soon, and we're going to talk about our adventures in the southwest side of Chicago and beyond. There, Florida.
You must really have a longing for, a nostalgic longing for the for prison. With your January 6th.
Yeah.
Now you're gonna talk about your mobbed up past.
Yes. Yeah. It's pretty interesting. I survived. And I live between a heart surgeon and an international executive. So I did something right, didn't I?
Jeez. Or there's something wrong with this country. I don't know. Yeah. Remember MyPillow? You go to MyPillow, use BELL 1776 promo code for a discount. Please visit Mr. Lindell's website and support him and us with that promo code BELL 1776. And 2 weeks we will have on the prestigious Dr. Robert Malone, the inventor of mRNA.
Yes, and I'm putting it out tonight, June 12th at Bourbon Street. We've got Tom Holman. Remember, he was Trump's border czar. He will be the next head of Homeland Security. Sarah Carter, you guys know her from Fox News, right? She's a contributor.
Do we have that?
We have, I don't know if we have the flyer up there still. We have other border experts. We're going to have leaders from the Chicagoland community and activists, and we're going to have a conversation about how the illegal invasion of America is affecting the city of Chicago. So it's going to be really interesting. The 12th of June, 6 to 9 p.m. Check us out on the Facebook page, or we'll have it out on Twitter and some of the other social media pages. All right.
And join us at Bourbon Street if you can. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.